Welcome to Richard and Greg, a channel dedicated to discussion, debate and argument on a whole array of topics. In today's video, I asked Greg about a headline published today stating, quote, Microsoft files patent to record and score meetings on body language, unquote. And I asked Greg, is this 1984 writ large? Are we now going to be watched literally everywhere we go? Let's hear what he has to say. Welcome to Richard and Greg. It's Monday, the 30th of November 2020, and the time is 20:31 GMT. Some 3 hours ago, BBC News published an article entitled Microsoft Files Patent to Record and Score Meetings on Body Language. I shall just read a small part of this and then ask Greg to comment. Technology giant Microsoft has filed a patent for a system to monitor employees' body language and facial expressions during work meetings and give the events a quality score. A filing suggests it could be deployed in real-world meetings or online virtual get-togethers. It envisions rooms being packed with sensors to monitor the participants, which could raise privacy concerns. Microsoft is already under fire over a separate productivity score tool, Employee Surveillance Tool. That feature was introduced last year, but came to prominence only after a public demo at a corporate event. It allows managers to keep track of individual workers' use of Microsoft's Office 365 software, including Outlook email and the Teams meeting and Excel spreadsheets. Microsoft points out the facility is not enabled by default and suggests its primary goal is to identify IT shortcomings, but critics say it is effectively an employee surveillance tool. Facial expressions. Companies do not always make use of patents they register, but they often reveal ideas in development before they appear in commercial products. Details of the meeting inside computer system were filed in July, ahead of being made public this month. They say the sensors could record which invitees actually attend a meeting, attendees' body language and facial expressions, the amount of time each participant spent contributing to the meeting, and speech patterns consistent with boredom. They also suggest employees' mobile devices could be used to monitor whether they were simultaneously engaged in other tasks, such as texting or browsing the internet, as well as to check their schedule to take into account whether they had to attend other meetings the same day. I'll stop there and I will say good evening to Greg and ask him, is this Big Brother or is this just a good, effective working tool for honourable employers? Greg, good evening.
Good evening. Luckily, you haven't got a monitor or you'd be immediately assessing me. My thoughts on this immediately think this could be very useful in a card game, particularly a game like poker. Instead of using your own intuition and experience as to how your opponent at the table was playing, you could switch the machine on and miss out on all the amusement of actually working out what's going on around you for yourself. Now, this is employers who obviously cannot trust their senior management to work out who's worth having at a meeting and who isn't worth having at a meeting. But then again, if they've bought your time, the employer that is, are they not entitled to assess in any way they wish that time that they have purchased? So I don't have a problem with this. You're in a position to do as I did, which is say to employers many, many years ago, a plague on all your houses, and be my own boss, which of course at the end of the day means that absolutely everybody is your boss. from the bank to the taxman to the landlord to the customer. Whereas if you're working for somebody, you only have to manage to fool one person. I think it's almost impossible to uninvent something, and it is clearly impossible to uninvent a patented item like employee assessment.
Okay, Greg, I accept the fact you cannot necessarily uninvent something. We've already heard, for example, Amazon tracking all of its workers, measuring their productivity while in the warehouses. And there is an argument to say, well, you don't want people skiving, but how far do you take this? And how far do you take the recording of meetings? Now, I will be the first to accept that initially there will be a lot of reaction against it, and over time people will begin to accept it. But then, if you know a meeting is being recorded, for example, are you not then less likely to actually express your true opinions?
You're more likely to express the opinions your employers want, which I presume is why they're doing it. I well remember back in the 60s, I shared a flat in what was nicknamed Kangaroo Valley, namely Earl's Court in London, because there were so many Australians lived there at the time, in Nevern Square. It was a very large flat and multiple occupancy and great fun at times. And one of the members in the flat was working for Unilever, who were and are a very large corporation. And he was a time and motion expert. And chatting with him on one occasion, because I didn't really understand much about it. I was young and fairly inexperienced. He was a little older. And I said, what does this involve? And he said, well, to put it quite bluntly, I turn up at any site and I tend to ask the managers there, who's the laziest person in the room or in this particular sector of the factory? And they would have immediately identify somebody, and I would ask them why they hadn't got rid of it. And they'd say, well, his output's great. So I would then go and assess exactly what he was doing. And this would be somebody who had worked out all the shortcuts on how to do a job. You then timed him doing it, and you measured it against everyone else in the room, and you ended up making his output that to which everyone on that section of the factory must aspire, because he had found, for instance, instead of walking around the machine to the left, if you walked around to the right, it was quicker and easier. This is exactly the same as the concept when one is going through a supermarket checkout, that you select out of your trolley rather than put every single item for them to put through the machine. You select out all the items you have multiples of, and you put them at the front of the queue to go through the machine. And as they go through, you tell the teller how many of them you have. You put out one butter, but you actually have three, so you leave two in the trolley, and it means you've saved time on taking stuff out and putting it back in. Time and motion. These are all tricks that people learn, just as you'll find that in meetings, people learn that it's probably a good idea, for instance, to let 2 or 3 people have their say and then say something that sums up what they've said very briefly, because that immediately shows you're paying attention. You can con these systems if you have the ability to read through them. So the more you know about the surveillance system under which you live, the better you can rip it off. So actually, organizations that use rigid policies like this are making a rod for their own back.
So you don't think necessarily then that this is a bad thing, Greg?
I don't have a problem with it. The people are paying you to be there. So they are perfectly at liberty to assess what you're doing while you're there. If you don't like it, go and work for yourself. Hold your labour and go and work for someone else.
Can you trust the employer to actually tell you that these meetings are being recorded?
You can't trust anybody to do anything. That's why the employers are using surveillance techniques, because they don't feel they can trust their employees. Make your mind up whether you want to be surveyed or not. You're surveyed all the time when you're out shopping. You're surveyed on the in-store cameras so that they are working out which is the flow direction most likely within the store. And they work out, for instance, if you look at most department stores or supermarkets, the entrance is at the right-hand end of the building, because almost everybody walks into a building and turns right. So if they put it at the right-hand end, the left-hand end entrance, everyone would be out of the store very quickly. So you get them to turn right through a door that's at the right-hand end, and they will follow the outside line of the store, and they will see far more of the items in there. You are being surveyed as to which aisle the most time is spent in, and that's the premium aisle, for which many stores charge the suppliers of the goods more per shelf foot than they do for other areas of the store. You are timed whether you are looking at the top shelf, the middle shelf, or the bottom shelf, which is why 2 quick items, they have impulse purchases on the ends of shelves, and the premium area is that at eye level, neither up nor down from average eye level. So the goods they want to sell, or that are fast moving, or that they make the most profit on, are sitting on those shelves. Have you never asked yourself why there are probably 4 different places in many a supermarket where you can buy batteries? Well, it's quite simple. It's probably one of the biggest markup areas in the shop, other than the charge for bags to take your goods away in.
Okay, well, I recall that when I first started my banking career, part of our training to become what were then called lending officers in the early stages, we had interviews with theoretical customers, and those interviews were recorded. Admittedly, the camera equipment was nowhere near the standard that it is today, but they would record a meeting. Usually it was tape recorded, not filmed. We did have tape recorders in those days, and then they would be used for training purposes. So there was a benefit for that. But now when they're talking about looking at facial expressions, some of the concerns people have, for example, is that if you're being filmed in a room, and let's say your supervisor, manager, boss, whatever, is imparting information to you, he can or she can then look at that tape afterwards and see every individual's facial response to the comments being made. Now, to some degree, a lot of employees might not wish their employer to see those facial responses. But I come back to what I asked earlier. Is this not going to curtail free speech? Is this not going to curtail, if you like, free facial expressions? And is this not going to actually inhibit the employees' say within an organization for fear of that recording being held against them at some stage in the future?
Are you seriously going to tell me that you will walk into a meeting and stick your tongue out at whoever's organizing it, or pull faces, or sneer in your appearance to them? No, you're going to walk in with a bright attempt to look interested, to look pleasant, and to look as if you're in command of the situation that is around you. You do it now without a camera because you know you're under surveillance by a competent manager. If you're looking bored and you still come out producing the best results, you will find that sooner or later you'll be promoted. If you clearly are miles ahead of the game, you'll usually find that the manager will try and sabotage you because he's frightened of losing his job to you. You know, these things go on all the time. why is anybody so worried about it? It's just a different way of playing office politics. You can fool the camera just as much as you've been fooling them all along in reality, or just as little. I have no problem with the idea of any manager getting as much assistance to do as much as possible to produce the best results. Just as whenever you call a call center, you have an inane recorded message saying that telephone calls will be recorded for operational use, which really means that they can check their staff as to whether they're being rude to the clients. It also means that if you make an allegation that one of the staff was rude to you, they can substantiate this and deal with the staff accordingly, or deal with you accordingly if you're telling lies. You know, how long will it be before the only way in any justice system to get a proof of a rape case is to actually have films in all hotel bedrooms, just to be on the safe side, so that allegations can be substantiated without the interference of barristers who are defending the indefensible by sabotaging the victim. No, it goes on all the time in one format or another. Learn to live with it.
Well, allegedly, Greg, in Russia, if you're a diplomat and you stay in one of their hotels, your hotel room is videotaped and bugged. So there we go. Greg, I'm very disappointed. I was hoping for more controversy this evening, and all I've got is compliance with Big Brother. So my
Big Brother is here to stay.
My suspicions of you are verified. Greg, thank you very much.
That's quite all right. Don't forget, I spent the last 50 years opting out.
Until we speak again.
Indeed, I look forward to it.
We hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if so, kindly subscribe to our channel and press the bell sign so that you are notified of our videos as and when they are published. And also in the description box below, we place links to certain books, articles, and programs which you may find of benefit, and for which we will receive a small commission should you purchase through our link. And this will help support our channel and to enable us to develop it further.